Hello everyone, my name is Serge Pilko, and we are starting today my session which called Legacy Desktop Apps UI and UX Modernization from Theory to Practice. I'm very glad to be a speaker on this event, and I hope this first event and in the next year we'll have the second one. Let's see. In the beginning, I'd like to add some words about who am I. I was a Delphi developer, and I'm a Delphi developer from 1999. I'm Embarcadero MVP, Delphi evangelist and influencer. This is how I'm calling myself. I also am presenter of webinars on Delphi, PyMonkey, and Red Studio ecosystem. They were my own webinars. We prepared webinars together with Embarcadero. I was a speaker on different conferences about Delphi ecosystem subjects. Right now, I'm responsible for Get Package Manager content at Embarcadero together with my colleague Jim Makis. I'm a founder and CEO of Softacom Ltd. We are a software development company, and our main specialization Delphi development from scratch, Delphi application support, and legacy Delphi applications modernization, migration from legacy Delphi versions to up-to-date Delphi versions. We are a TMS software consultancy partner as my best componist. And of course, as a influencer, I help students and young people to select Delphi for their future career. We are preparing different events for them and for students and explain them why Delphi is a very cool tool today for development. Why did I choose such a topic? First of all, it's a real pressing issue for our domain. We get in different records for this, and sometimes this is a real challenge. It's not easy to migrate, just use some tool, especially if we're talking about UI migration, user experience migration. And this is why I'm calling it hot calls from the business, because for business it's very important to sell the product. And user interface and how applications look like is crucial. It's very crucial, important for the business, and it affects to the sales. And of course, we just love this tool. Agenda. Just briefly, in the beginning, we'll just discuss about our client's classic case with UI and UX. Then we will discuss which ways do we have for UI and UX migration, and can we, for example, still use VCL if we want to have some amazing user interface for our migrated application. We will discuss which frameworks we can use, like PyMonkey, or maybe we want to go to PWA and re-engineer after our software also using Delphi, or maybe we will still use VCL. Well, of course, why not? I will mention pitfalls of migration according to our experience and how we are doing with risk management. Then we will discuss and I will show you our internal framework, like steps, which steps we perform for migration. I will show you prototyping tools on an examples. And in the end, I will provide some use cases from our real life, from our real experience, with some numbers and challenges and goals which we were reached. Long case. The same thing we can do in different ways, and it's a very important point, that you have to do everything as easy as possible. But sometimes it's not easy to find this way to do this as easy as possible. In terms of software development, you see that we can have On the left side, application, like we are sit, and the first idea is that it has to look like this way, but it really can look like on the right side, and this is not like easy way to find how to implement it. This is you should have an experience, you should have an insights, you have to understand how your user will work, and of course you have to understand the current trends in the software development, how users used to use software and so on. And we are not talking about only software development if we are talking about UI and UX. And as I already mentioned, this is not all our fault that we have all this legacy, sometimes ugly, sometimes obsolete UI and UX and navigation, applications with navigations. This is because if we, of course, we developed our software 10, 15 years ago, and even cars look differently. Is there interfaces? Driving interfaces are different. Not maybe driving interface with the wheel is the same, but all around you is different. New technologies, new devices, new possibilities, new trends, and of time changes. We have new user preferences because if users like to work with clear, white, easy interface, you have to implement it also, because in other case you will be outside of the trend. Everything is changing. In the beginning, just a little bit about the theory. UI or UX, user interface, user experience. Sometimes people cannot explain the difference between these terms, but in another case, I can say that sometimes they cannot go outside and without each other. Because if we're talking about the specialist, I saw the vacancies like we need a UI specialist and we need a UX specialist. But my opinion, it should be in one place. The same specialist should be UI and UX, because it cannot to draw something without understanding the navigation, or implement navigation without understanding how it will look like. Here is like a cloud of text or cloud of terms which belongs to these terms. For me, UI, user interface, is more like style, readable text, color, responsive, design, background, how you look with your eyes. And UX is more about objective tools. It's like navigations, reaching its goals. But again, of course, positive attitude, it's not an objective, it's subjective. And in the middle of this UI and UX, you can see that it's attractiveness, experience, emotions, which is very important for the first impression from your software. This is what I wanted to mention. That all those terms a little bit blurred, and which each other. After the theory, let's imagine that we have some classic use case for desktop application, legacy applications which were developed 10-15 years ago. And right now we have a lot of such great applications. It's like 100 platforms, different developers, different components and styles, complicated navigation or old school navigation. Maybe it's right now people think that it's complicated, but let's say this is old school. We did not have other way to navigate 15 years ago. Everything is too small in our application. No high DPI support, because of course again devices were changed. New resolutions. Ugly UI, it's equal to, because up UI is obsolete and doesn't meet the industry standards. Text is not rebuildable because everything is too small. And all these problems are common for any legacy desktop software. It's not only developed with Delphi, it will be for Visual Studio, Eclipse, any other tools, it doesn't matter. This is all about the new standards. But in the current session, of course, we will discuss modernization UI and UX for my favorite development tool for Delphi and C++ Builder. Because I mentioned this is my favorite tool for building native desktop applications. We have still a lot of great applications developed with Delphi, and they work as expected. They do everything very well, but sometimes their UI is obsolete, and this is in our nowadays it's very important. Nowadays it's very important because for the users it's not enough to have just useful application. They like to work with your applications. And in terms of Delphi, I still don't see any alternatives for rapid development on native Windows desktop apps if performance matters. Here is I showed app UI and UX modernization layers. If we are talking about modernization, we will tackle with different layers, and we can perform different modernizations on different layers. On the top level, we have a platform, then we have architecture, then framework and development tool, and only inside development tool we will have user interaction and navigation, and as a child it will be style and design. In terms of real things, it will be Windows. We have, for example, Windows as a platform, then we have a desktop application. Desktop application will be built with Delphi using VCL framework. Inside this, using Delphi, we will implement our user interaction and navigation, and it will look like and have a style and design. And when we are talking about migration, modernization UI, we have to think about all these layers and think what we have to modernize, because different layers will need different steps, different developers, sometimes different implementations. And before any modernization for UI, we have to select a strategy. And that's a very important step, and depend on this step, you will have different risks and different deliverables and results in the future, because a mistake on this step will cost a lot in the future. For example, we have a classic Windows desktop application developed with VCL, and it all has only 32-bit support. What we can do? Which ways do we have? If we want to, of course, modernize our user interface and user experience, let's in the future just mention UX. We just can modernize our Delphi 5 or Delphi 7, the classic application, just move the controls, add the sizes, change the background, just use the same Delphi version, just modernize without any re-engineering. The second strategy, we can migrate our application from legacy Delphi version to up-to-date Delphi version, like a Delphi 10.4. And with this, and then we will have the same Windows desktop application. It will be VCL. This we can add 64-bit support, but we will have all the features of the latest Delphi version. including Delphi styles, including high DPI support, including Unicode, and all the rest very important UX features. The third strategy, why not? We can migrate to, of course, up-to-date Delphi version, but migrate inside the framework. Instead of VCL, we can migrate our software to FMX. In this case, sorry, we will have totally different design engine for our UI. Who knows how in FMX it works? You should understand me. Sorry. And as a more complicated modernization strategies, you even can go to totally different architecture and platform. You can go to desktop and use like PWA. You can use Electron, Web for desktop. Using FireMonkey, you can go to cross-platform and mobile support, and you will have in this case totally different, but sometimes it's totally different animal, and this strategy is much more harder. Also, the very important question, should we develop our UI from scratch, or we should try to modernize existing forms? And this also is very crucial, because sometimes modernizing new UI, existing UI, it will just cosmetic things, and unfortunately you won't be able to change your navigation, improve your UX, and so on. But again, which ways do we have? We can develop new UX from scratch, or we can modernize all forms and apply new UX, or maybe just for the first impression we can modernize only main forms, or we can try to add styles to our controls, but unfortunately not all controls support styles. The other strategy, we can try to update the components, and for example, instead of using some ugly buttons, use brand new style buttons. Of course, too many ways, too many risks. And we suggest on this business analysis stage perform risk management. Just sit and write all the risks, discuss these risks, somehow measure the probability of these risks, and why not vote inside your team and make a decision in common. This list of sections for the risks, which I suggest to discuss. It's like a sections, but inside the section you will thinking about and list your risks and discuss them. Budget, of course, very important. Resources and their availability, because if terms is critical for you, you should understand that if you have support development team, you won't be able to jump these people to the development, or where you will be able to use to find the additional resources, their cost, and so on. Time. I want to explain what does it mean, because you know, of course. Bugs. You have to understand that if your software is very stable today, after any modernization, and for UI also, you will have bugs, and your clients and users will have these bugs, and you will need to process and handle all these cases and requests. And this is a reputation, of course. Components migration, you have to think about, do you have anyway all these components for your migrated version? Wrong decisions? No, of course. Expectations. You have to think about that your clients, your boss, your management are thinking, and they are on the same page with you, with technical team. Wrong estimations, it's time, what will be if we have some deadline, but we estimated wrongly, and so on. What we will do? Technological deadlocks, of course. It's depends of each software. I don't know which software you're using, but it's very important. Communication risks. It's risks inside your team, inside with your outsourcing team if you are using them, with your management, with your users. Parallel development. It's also important risk. If you have a working product and your team is changing all the time this product, but you have the parallel branch where the people modernizing your UI, somehow you have to merge all the improvements. And of course, you will have your own risks. How to modernize when it comes to UI and UX, of course. Here is our framework. I cannot say this is some kind of miracle or we invented something new. Of course, I think you're using something similar, but here is I just trying to share my experience. Why not? In the beginning, we are doing business analysis. This is what I already mentioned: strategy, risk management, expectations, and so on. Okay, we are ready to go. Yes, let's go. But development and implementation is the last step. Before this, even on the wireframing stage, you will understand the scope of work, what you will want to change, what your business want to change, and management. And during all these steps, implementation even you're on business analysis stage, and right now you have one vision of implementation. After going through the wireframing and design, implementation can be different, 100%. Okay, the second step is wireframing. It can be optional. The third step is design. After wireframing, you have a wires, just ugly boxes and squares and forms. But if you need a beauty application, you have to design how it will look like at shadows, colors, backgrounds, fonts, font styles, images, and so on, of course. And only after you have and you understand how your application will look like, you can start implementation and develop it using Delphi. Because developing prototype for UX with any development tool is very expensive. And I'll show you why we are using wireframing and why it's much more faster and cheaper. In terms of business analysis, this is sub-steps which we are performing. The first one, choose migration strategy, what we already mentioned. Perform risk management. Create navigation map. It's like brainstorming. Yes, this 3 and 4 it's connected to each other. Organize brainstorming, inspect and remove all obsolete forms. Believe me, if we are talking about 50 years application, we will have a lot of dead forms, a lot of dead source code, which for example, your outsourcing company can try to estimate, but they don't know that right now you don't need these forms. The next step, you have to create a components migration table and, of course, deal with project management routines. Brainstorming tool. Now I will switch to MindMeister tool and will show you how it works and how it can be useful for you and for your future UI and UX modernization. Oops, sorry. Now I'd like to show you one of our best favorite tools for brainstorming. We also use this tool for creation software hierarchy, list of pages, tree of forms and pages of the application. It's called MindMeister. We also use, like other favorite tools, we also use Microsoft Visio and Draw.io. of course. Each of these tools has its own pros and cons, but I'd like to show you this one just for very fast interactions with our team members. Let's create some diagram, and here let's say that let's imagine that we have some software, and we have, of course, we have some forms for this software, and when we modernize our software, we have existed list of forms and their hierarchy, and right now we want to somehow improve this structure. In the beginning, for example, we are creating what we have right now, and then we are trying to brainstorm and think how we can improve and make navigation for these forms much more easier. Here is I just will show you how it works, and maybe you will also use this tool. Let's imagine that we have some software. The first form is splash screen. After splash screen, what we have? Usually we have login. Let's see, login form. All these nodes can have different styles. For you, it will be useful to mark different types of forms. But in the beginning, let's create some structure. On login form, if, for example, we don't have any credentials, we can register. Let's say that we have a register. Let's assign a style for all these forms because they have the same level, I guess. After login form, we can go to main form, and you see for creation of the next form, I am just selecting this node and clicking the plus. Then we have main form. Let's assign the same style. On the main form, we can have different features, and of course, main form can have its own main menu with its own structure. Let's say that we can have something like users form, products form. What else? Stores, and so on. Each of these forms, of course, maybe it depends of your user experience, your interface, will have maybe some model forms or even inline CRUD operations, but here is we just showing how to create a hierarchy. Let's say that for users form we will have edit form, and the same form for each. You know that it's a little bit obsolete behavior, but it's just for understanding how this tool can work. You can scale, you can share this brainstorming schema with your team members, and it's very easy to use. The one thing which I want to mention, it has a flow structure. It means that you have a simple hierarchy. You cannot assign, for example, one form to couple parents nodes. But in this case, this limitation in another case will try to motivate you to create much more easier navigation. Okay, this is what I wanted to show you with this brainstorming tool, like an example. Okay, welcome back. Let's move on. Components migration table. This is what we are preparing for business analysis. It's very crucial for the components and understand. Do you have these components for the up-to-date Delphi versions? Because or you will need to use an Alex, or you will need to implement your own components with CL, or maybe if we are talking about FMX, you will need to re-implement and redesign them from VCL to FMX at all. You can modernize this table, of course, add your own columns and with your own information. Wireframing. We suggest start with not wireframing all the software. It's too hard and it's not necessary. Using wireframing tool, we can create a prototype for the main 2030 main forms, and you can use different prototyping tools. It can be HotGloo, InVision app, XShareMS, MS Visio. It can be Draw.io. It's all these tools are my favorite tools. Or you even can use Photoshop. After you wireframe it, your application, you have to show it to your product owners, collect impression and notes and change, and it will be a lot of interactions of all this process. Now I'll show you wireframing and prototyping tools which we're using, and we will start from HotGloo tool, HotGloo.io. Let's switch to another screen. Now I want to show you one of our again favorite wireframing and prototyping tool for user interface. We will compare two tools, HotGloo in this video, and the second one, InVision app. They have two different concepts for prototyping. HotGloo is very interesting tool for creating wireframes with interactions, events, actions, navigations, button clicks, and so on. Let's go and try to create some easy prototype for improving and prototyping your user experience for your existing maybe software or your future software. Of course, you can even take your current application, prototype it here, and then start brainstorming and apply improvements, think how to improve your user experience, and do it step by step, and then implement into your real software. On the left side, we have a list of forms, or pages. It doesn't matter. We can prototype in this with this tool desktop applications, mobile, web. It doesn't matter. But right now we will talk about desktop applications. Let's think that we should have some form. Let's call it login form. We have a login form. After login form, we will have main form. Let's click here. You can see on the left side we can log in main form. Let's say that for login form we will need some label, input, for example. Let's try to make as easy as possible, like password. And we should have a button, of course, like login. Oh. For now, that's enough. Now, let's say that we have a main form, and we will navigate to this main form after login. Main form, and it's let's assign and create an interaction. Like after clicking login, we can go choose action, go to page. We have a main form page, save interaction. And this is the easiest. This is the easiest behavior. Let's go to preview. You see, like here we have our wireframing and prototype of our future application. We are clicking login and we're going to main form. It's the easiest behavior. Now I will take some time out, will create some more complicated wireframe, and then we'll go back to you and I will show you how it works. Welcome to the second part of our HotGloo prototyping tool review. I already created the next forms like splash screen, login, sign up form, main form, users, products, and storage forms. Anyway, I'd like to add and mention that HotGloo tool is a tool for prototyping without development. You will have application or software prototype which can be very close to your future software, and believe me, you will spend time for prototyping much more or less than if you will develop the same thing in any development tool like software developer. And this tool is very good for prototyping and testing different navigation behaviors, UX behaviors, and so on. Now let's go to, in the beginning, I will show you a preview of our prototype, and we jump to the, here is our prototype. Let's click preview, and voila, we have imagine that this is our application. Finally, you can test it for mobile devices like or different desktop resolutions and so on. You are not limited with representation. You even can develop responsive design. Let's imagine that we started from some splash screen of our application. After splash screen, we are going to login form. You see that we can have buttons as hyperlinks, edit, and so on. If, for example, we do not registered user, let's click and we are going to the sign up form, where you also can prototype all the fields. Think about the fields as best practices. You should have as less different fields as possible. Everything should be easy as possible. You have to think about high DPI design. It depends of how your controls will look like on different resolutions, and so on. After user filled the edits, he can sign up, and we are going to some main form. Main form can have different also buttons, grids, edit, and so on. Interesting thing of this tool, you can have model pop-up windows. Here is I implemented that window. Tool very flexible, and after, for example, spending 30 minutes like getting how it works, you can create the prototypes very fast, and it's very cool, really. Here is some forms. Here I added a controls. It's like some controls which you can use for prototyping. Different pages and so on, and this way you can prototype your software before implementation. It's a very good tool for design and navigation, user prototyping, user experience, how user will interact. Believe me, if you will use, for example, Delphi or any other development tool, you will spend much more time, much more. And here is, you can just drop the control or move the control, and you will see the result. You can share it with other people in your team, not necessary to share any executables, files, and so on. That's very interesting. Here is an implementation. You can see that after we have a controls palette, you can see how many controls do we have. Each control have a lot of properties, similar like in Delphi. Each control can have also the actions, like what we want to have. By clicking to the button, we can go to another page, something swipe. After it's an event, and we can have for each event the action. And we can show something as a control, show any message, go to any page, URL. And I won't mention here is about variables, but variable is here is like internal, like it's not a programming, it's like tricks how you can add an interactions between different controls, and that's very good because they have also it's called handlers which monitor variable changing, and after variable, for example, was changed, you can do something with other controls. And here, and again, it's very easy without any code writing. Yes, you are not writing any code. It's not a JavaScript, PHP, and so on. It's just visual tool for prototyping. You see that we have interactions for the controls. We can even add different groups for radio buttons. Here is the main form. We can add images, panels, add them transparency, and so on. Here is how model window was implemented. We have some link, and we have a hidden controls for it. Here is our pop-up window, and after clicking this caption, I am showing this pop-up window, and after clicking to this window itself, we are hiding it. We have also not except elements, but we also have a symbols. Symbols is a, let's say, it's like user controls, like a preset of user controls which we use on each page. For example, a placeholder is a symbol. It's like let's say it's a group of components, and if I'm sending something, changing something here, I will have a result for all the pages. You see. Okay, this is all what I wanted to show you, because I can say that this is a separate subject for the summit for prototyping, and it just were my best practices, and I am not affiliated anyway with this company. I'm even paying for my own account, for company accounts, and that's all what I wanted to show you. Let's move on. Welcome back. Now let's switch to the second tool. It's called InVision app. The second tool which I wanted to mention, it's called InVision app. It's a tool also for prototyping any type of software, including desktop. The difference is of this software, if, for example, compare with HotGloo, that your prototyping interaction based on the images, like screenshots of your software. In HotGloo, you have a palette of components. You create a form, moving controls to this form, and set up interaction. But InVision app just uses your future app screenshots, and you're uploading the screenshots to the system and set up interaction between them. Maybe you can add some controls. I don't know. I'm not using this way. But this tool is very good after you have, for example, your business analyst prototype software in HotGloo. Then your artist, if necessary, draw your future design, how it will look like. And in the end, after the artist, you have screenshots of your forms, like with beautiful colors, backgrounds, and so on. And after that, you upload it into this tool, and you can see the interactions, how the software will look like, and you can share with your boss or your client or any other involved people. Because in HotGloo, you won't be able to create the design which will be 100% how you want it will look like in the end. Because anyway, HotGloo is prototyping, but InVision is more like touching the future application with the same real design. Let's see how it works. Just let's create some easy prototype based on our previous screenshots of HotGloo. Doesn't matter how it will look like. You see how many types of devices we can prototype UI. Okay, now we just have a empty project and we have to add the screens for it. Okay, let's add the screens. As a first screen, I suggest to add our first screen and then add the rest ones. After we added all the screens or screenshots or prototypes, prepared prototypes in Photoshop or any other drawing tool, doesn't matter, we can start prototyping. Let's go to our splash screen and let's start to add interactions between our screens, which we added before. By default, we are in play mode, but we have to switch to build mode. And we have to select interaction areas and assign actions for these interaction areas. Usually it's just moving to the second to another screenshot. After clicking by this caption, let's go to our login form. Let's go back to play mode, click by this link, and voila, we are on login form. The same way on this form we have to add interactions for still not a user caption and for login button. Still not a user, we have to go to sign up form, login, we have to go to main form. Go back to play mode, click to still not a user, and okay, we are on our sign up form. Here is the same thing. We have to add sign up, we have to go to main form. Cancel, we have to go to login form. Play mode, sign up, voila, we are on the main form. Here is the same way we have to add interactions for our child forms, any links, buttons, and so on. Let's add, okay, that's enough, I guess. For example, inside child forms, you can add also navigation interactions for moving back to your main forms and so on. And in the end, you see that you will have a prototype which will show you how your application with your exact design, of course, if you need this at all, will work and will look like very close to real life. Sometimes you will need this tool, sometimes not, but it's imagine that if you have only screenshots for your applications, sometimes it's too hard to explain to somebody how it works, how they connect to each other. But using this tool, you can add this interactions, share it with someone else, and he will see how it works. You see, and I cannot spend a lot of time and explain how to work with the software. It's not a subject of my topic, and you can. My idea will just mention these all tools, and then you can go when you have a time, check how they work and investigate, and let's see, maybe you will use it in your future developments, and I hope it was helpful. This is what I wanted to show you. Welcome back. Let's move on. After we have a prototype like wireframe, we have to think, do we need an artist, or we just can give our wireframes to the developer and the UI is up to him. But if you need a beautiful application, you will need to do these steps. Okay, This is our, like we are doing. We can give other steps. We can take 15, 25 main forms and ask artists to draw the UI and styles in Photoshop or Figma. But in the end, it should look like your software should look like how it was drawn. Then you can organize meetings and approve the design. It will be good to show the concept to your existing customers and get their feedback. Then after we approve the concept, styles, colors, and so on, it's not necessary to draw all the forms. The artist just can draw the brand book for all your controls, interactions, forms, background. It's like your application should look like. It's not like the developer will take and apply the style for any components without any brand book. If, for example, we don't have any components, we can ask the artist to draw this component and please show us how it should look like a spin edit, how it should look like. Maybe in the beginning he won't draw it, but later yes. But this is why it's not necessary to draw all the forms. We'll have a concept and brand book. This is how, I don't know, some brand book can look like. Enabled controls, disabled controls, drop downs, checkboxes, radio buttons, and so on. Implementation. This is the first step. We have to perform components migration or custom implementation, of course. No, this is what we already developer is doing. We are working, we are developing. We have to do forms migration or implementation. Usually in parallel with the code refactoring. We don't have another way, because if we're talking with 15 years of software development with all these procedures development, and we have to, it's good practice if we are redesigning applications, it's good practice to divide logic from the user interface, to use some MVC pattern and so on. And of course, as the final step, we can think about UI testing automation, and yes, we have different tools for this. All of them usually commercial, but if it will be interesting, maybe in the future we can prepare a separated topic. Timing is very important. Pitfalls of our migration. Of course, it's not all the pitfalls, but it's the major ones which are it's my headache sometimes. UI and UX modernization, usually it's fully functional app migration, and it's terms and resources, and sometimes it's impossible to estimate how long it will take, and unfortunately sometimes it's even impossible to do on any fixed price as a fixed price project or do as a fixed price models. It's in the end usually it will be like model like unhappy and happy, but we want to have something like win to win in different business books, but we are calling it like happy. It means that you will be happy and developers will be happy, business will be happy, client will be happy, contractor will be happy. Components are incompatible, don't exist at all for up-to-date Delphi versions. Yes, unfortunately, not all the companies live during all these 15 years. That's the life. Terms. Like I already mentioned, you cannot estimate modernization. It's a lot of pitfalls, a lot of hidden works, a lot of communications risks if we're talking about expectations. Development team can think about one thing, management will think about different thing. And the major pitfall, it's like no results of working product. Like you started migration, but after a year or 2 years, you still do not have working product, and your business will say, stop, enough. We don't have more money. That's all. I hope you won't have this situation. I think you won't. Now I will mention 2 use cases, and I will try to do it very quickly because unfortunately I reached my almost reached my timing. But let's say the first use case, like we have Delphi 7 application with a lot of forms. As a logic glued to the forms, it's no MVC, no OP, everything inside the components, event handlers, sometimes some code in data models, sometimes in some separated classes. A lot of dead forms, difficult to support. Client is losing the market because his competitors has better user interface. User interface is crucial if we're talking about, because clients, employees will provide for him bad feedback, and clients managers will think your software is bad, not because it has bad functionality, because the impression will be bad. And what we wanted to do, redesign and UI modernization was very important for the clients, as the company works in the beauty industry, where the first impression is crucial. This is what I already mentioned. What we did step by step. We conducted source code analysis. Together we made a decision to migrate to the core forms to total new UI. Unfortunately, we cannot do that, just implement just cosmetic changes. We used Visio for creation of software navigation map and forms hierarchy. We used HotGloo for prototype new forms with updated navigations. And it was very important, and yes, we involved the artists which draw the main forms and the brand book for the components and controls and navigations. After that, developers created an FMX application. This is very important. We had VCL application, then developers just created FMX project because we made a decision to go to FMX because we wanted to use this FMX styles engine. We just created FMX empty applications, attached to it all the VCL application forms and units. Of course, migrated to the up-to-date Delphi version. After that, yes, you can combine in the same project VCL forms and FMX forms. I don't know, is it a good practice, but this is a real life for us. And after we migrated to the up-to-date Delphi version, as I remember, it was Tokyo, I guess. We had still VCL application, and then we started form by form implement new UI, new forms using FMX, and we had navigation between the VCL form to FMX, from FMX to VCL. As a summary, during modernization, instead of implementation of 20 forms, of course, we implemented 40 forms because application didn't look modern without modernization, different pop-ups, model forms, confirmation windows. The entire process took 11 months, and the following specialists were participated in the project process. It were project manager, business analyst, artists, and frame marketing developers. And as a result, that's not just words, thanks to a new UI prototype, only prototype, because a client just showed new prototype, like new version of software for their potential clients. They got at least 3 intentions of the future contracts. We even did not have a real working application, but client already had the benefits from it. The second use case, it's also very often use case nowadays, and I'll show you. I'll explain you why. We had a client with Delphi 2006 desktop app, and the app has a rich UI and a lot of calculations and drawings, and as a result, it needs CPU time. And this client had different projects in his house, and he was attacked by external and even internal influence who insisted on moving to another technology to increase the performance. They mentioned 2 times, no, Delphi, let's go to, I don't remember, it was of course .NET maybe, and you will have, or it was Python, I don't remember, and you will have 2 times better functionality. Okay. Client should have arguments. Who knows? Maybe they right. This is why we perform the business analysis for him. What we did step by step, we analyzed the client's fears, listened to his thoughts and arguments. We prepared a business analysis and suggested concrete technologies. Yes, but it was not a Python. It were .NET, C# and Electron JavaScript. This again what these influencers I guess mentioned, because it's modern, trendy. Yes, we all have to go to these technologies because it's just a lot of noise about them. We developed 3 proof of concept applications with the same functionality and built in the benchmark to them. And we, of course, the result should be objective. This is why the source code and implementation of all 3 frameworks and application technologies were reviewed by external specialists, because who knows, maybe we implemented .NET wrongly because we want that some other technology should win. As a result, you can see we Electron, Delphi, and .NET in terms of desktop applications development, how your forms will open, how your UI will fast draw, entire impressions. I don't know. We created applications with, it was a lot of complicated grids with subgrids and opening these grids just as a page with 1000 records. It was crazy sometimes for WPF or Electron. I'm not talking about Electron. You can see my, you can Google my previous session. I compared Electron and Delphi, and we discussed internals of Electron, how it works, and you can see why it can be faster than Delphi for desktop application. And yes, it's very important. Delphi is native application. I even cannot say that WPF it's a native application, because you know you have different layers for the execution of code. No, especially for me, it's like my feelings for UI. You see that calculations as even the same has the same speed for all technologies. It means that just any formulas works good on any platform. But if we're talking about drawing UI, all these technologies have different principles of drawing UI. Even if you're talking about WPF, it's based on DirectX, but I don't know why, but it works not so fast as a classic GDI. Summary of this use case. The client made a decision to leave the software in Delphi. The client got proven arguments with the numbers. And after the proof of concept, as a separate milestone, we improved the speed, even the existing Delphi application, using the Delphi parallel calculations library, which were not implemented before. It was built on the classic threads, as I remember. Summary and my recommendations for all this UX modernization and migration strategies, works, and tasks. Don't migrate in one shot. It's too risky. too risky years of development. Continuous development is my favorite development pattern. I know that your business will have arguments. I need a product which will work as beauty as possible, which will look as beauty as possible. But unfortunately, guys, that's a trap. It's very risky. Try to combine FMX and VCL. Don't try to migrate in one shot all the forms. Okay, touch the FMX. Don't try to migrate from VCL to FMX just because of migration. You have to be confident with some FMX. VCL is very good for desktop native development. You should have a reasons to migrate to FMX. Of course, try to use the Delphi styles before global UX modernization. It's just apply the style to your project and your project properties and see how it look like. Maybe you just can change the width or height of controls, move them on the forms, and it will look pretty. Why not? You have to check and try this feature before any global modernization. My favorite recommendation, don't perform migration just because you want to perform migration. If your developers just need work, just expand the features, not migration. Use appropriate tool for appropriate objective, of course. And as a recap, a desktop native app is the best choice if performance matters. More information you can find on our YouTube channel, or I'm usually posting all my new recordings in my Twitter account. You can find all this my post here also. In the end of my session, we will have a Q&A round table where I will be able to answer your questions if you will have them. I want to good luck with all your future modernizations. Here is some information about me. You can reach me, ask anything involved to any activities and so on. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening to my session. I hope it won't be the last session. Maybe in the future we will meet more and more times. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Bye-bye.